Thanksgiving was supposed to be simple this year. My fiancé, Ryan, would meet my family, we'd eat dry turkey, endure awkward questions, and pretend everything was normal for a few hours. But right after dessert, my mom pulled out our old photo albums, the ones I'd seen 1,000 times and never thought twice about. She said it was just for fun. But when she handed them to Ryan, something changed. He froze. He grabbed my hand under the table, eyes locked on a page, and whispered, "Don't you see it?" I didn't, not at first. "See what?" I whispered back. His grip tightened. "How can you not see it?" That was the moment everything cracked. 5 hours later, I was on the phone with the police, my voice trembling as I said something I never imagined I'd say. "I think I was taken. I think I was stolen." Thanksgiving at my mother's house always felt like stepping into a perfectly folded napkin, clean, stiff, and not meant to be questioned. Ryan and I pulled up just before sunset. The house looked the same as always. Beige siding, flower beds trimmed like military recruits, and that ceramic turkey on the porch that somehow survived 20 Novembers without cracking. I'd warned Ryan not to expect warmth. My family did polite, not close. Polished, not personal. "Just smile and nod," I told him as we walked up the steps. He smiled sideways. "That's what I do best." Inside, it smelled like sage and lemon cleaner. My mother Marjorie was already at the stove, her apron spotless, her lipstick perfect. She greeted us like we were guests at a hotel. My stepdad, Frank, gave Ryan a firm handshake and patted me on the back like I was one of his coworkers. My younger half-brother, Cole, nodded at us from the couch, thumbs still flying on his phone. The only real warmth came from the oven and Ryan's hand in mine. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Turkey too dry, mashed potatoes lukewarm, and the conversation brittle under the weight of decades we didn't talk about. They asked Ryan about his photography business. Frank wanted to know if he'd ever photographed a president. My mom asked if we'd set a date. Nobody asked me anything. They never really did. Ryan, bless him, tried to loop me in. "Actually, Haley helped with editing this last shoot. She has a great eye." I smiled, nodded, but my voice stayed locked behind my teeth. After dessert, my mom wiped her hands and said it, like clockwork. "I brought the photo albums out just for fun." As if it hadn't been a yearly ritual since I was old enough to know what posed meant. She said it with that same faux surprise tone, like the albums had just appeared out of thin air instead of being dragged from the hallway closet with military precision. She carried them to the table like sacred texts. "You'll get to see little Haley," she said to Ryan, grinning. She was such a ham for the camera. I rolled my eyes behind my fork. Ryan smiled politely. The first album landed on the table with a soft thump. Leather-bound, edges fraying, the same one as always. Birthdays, school photos, Halloween costumes. I'd seen these pages 100 times. I knew which photos had jam stains on the corners, which captions were spelled wrong in blue ink. Ryan reached for the album. I watched his fingers hesitate as he flipped the first page. He laughed lightly at a picture of me in a glittery wizard hat. My mom leaned in to narrate. That was 3rd grade. She insisted on being a sorceress, not a witch. Very particular child. But then, something shifted. I saw it in his face. His smile faded. His brow furrowed. And then he stopped flipping. His hand went still on the page. He looked at me and whispered, "Don't you see it?" I blinked. "What?" I whispered. Ryan didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the page. "How can you not see it?" I leaned in, slow, careful, my heartbeat rising like static. It was a photo I'd seen before me, maybe 7, standing in front of a white picket fence. Red sweater, pigtails, that tight-lipped smile I always wore when I didn't know what else to do with my face. "Okay," I said, unsure. "That's me?" He turned the page. Another photo. Same face. Same expression. Different setting this time. I was at a park, leaves all around me, but the lighting on my face didn't match the shadows on the ground. My body was angled perfectly, unnaturally so, like I'd been pasted there with invisible tape. My stomach knotted. "That's just coincidence," I muttered. Ryan didn't answer. He flipped another page. This time I was by a fountain. Same tilt of the head, same odd smile, same eyes that didn't quite focus on anything. It was like watching a GIF on loop, same frame, different background. I couldn't breathe. "These are doctored," he said softly, barely moving his lips. Across the table, my mom was still smiling, telling Frank some story about how I once tried to give a worm a bath in the sink. None of them noticed we had gone still. Cold. 2. Don't get it, I stammered. Why would they fake pictures of me? That doesn't make sense. Ryan's jaw tightened. That's what we're going to find out. He turned one more page and there it was, a birthday photo. A cake, pink frosting, 3 candles, Frank with one arm around me, Mom leaning in with a knife to cut the cake. Only, my outline was fuzzy, like I was an afterthought added in Photoshop. And my eyes. They weren't looking at anyone. Not the camera. Not the cake. Not my so-called parents. Just nowhere. I looked up at Ryan. His expression was calm, but his fingers were shaking ever so slightly on the edge of the page. He didn't say anything else. He just closed the album gently and set it aside. Smile, my mom chirped, oblivious. Ryan, did you see the one where she wore the banana costume in kindergarten? Yeah, he said. It's great. He glanced at me, subtle but sharp. Under the table, he reached for my hand. He squeezed once, then whispered, "Just go along with it. I'll explain later." And just like that, I was 8 years old again, being told to smile, to perform, to keep the frame intact. I held my fork tighter. I kept my face still. I nodded at whatever my mom said next, but I wasn't really there anymore. I was staring into a picture of myself that didn't feel like mine, and wondering how much of my life had been edited. Back at our apartment, I didn't even take off my coat. I just stood in the doorway, stunned, while Ryan laid the photos out on the kitchen table like evidence. The kind you'd find in a folder marked classified. He had taken them quietly from the pile of loose prints Mom always kept next to the albums. I didn't even notice. That scared me more than the photos themselves. I'd sat at that table for 20 minutes while my childhood was being lifted. Here, he said, flattening the photo with the fountain. And this one too. I leaned over. Same smile, same face, but the background details didn't match. The light fell wrong. The angle of the shadows was impossible. You see it now, right? Ryan asked. Think so. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was how familiar they still felt, like my brain was desperately trying to justify them. I wanted them to be real. I needed them to be real. This one, he said, sliding over another. This is where it clicked for me. It was a photo of me in a pink coat, standing in front of a brick wall. I'd seen it my entire life. It hung in my mom's hallway for years. But now, look at the edges, he whispered. You're sharper than everything else in the frame. And he was right. The bricks were slightly blurred, like the camera hadn't focused. But my coat, my face, my hair, all in perfect clarity. Too perfect. This one isn't even from the same camera, he added. My legs buckled a little, and I had to sit down. My whole body felt unsteady, like my skin was loose and slipping. I pressed my palms against the edge of the table. Okay, but why? Why fake photos of me? I don't get it. Ryan sat across from me, quiet for a long beat. Do you remember anything before 5? I froze. My instinct was to say yes, to rattle off childhood memories like popcorn, but my mouth wouldn't move. My mind went silent, blank, like someone had drawn a curtain across the first chapters of my life. I tried, I really did, but all I could summon was static. A flicker of fluorescent lights, a smell sterile and cold, maybe a hallway? I swallowed hard. No, I whispered. Ryan leaned in, gentle but serious. That's not normal, Haley. My mom always said it was because of a fever. I replied too quickly. She said I was sick when I was little, that I didn't talk much. He nodded slowly, but I could see it in his eyes. Doubt. Concern. Do you ever feel like you just appeared one day? He asked. I laughed. It came out brittle. What kind of question is that? He didn't answer, because we both already knew. Somewhere, deep down, I had felt that for years. And now I couldn't unfeel it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ryan had drifted off beside me hours ago, his breathing slow, one arm stretched across the blanket like he was guarding something fragile. Me, maybe. Or the illusion we'd both just watched collapse. I sat upright in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the photos still spread out on the nightstand like a crime scene that refused to close. And then, a smell. Citrus. Not real, not in the room, but vivid. Like an orange had just been peeled in another life. And behind it, a voice. Soft, foreign, saying something I couldn't understand, but kind, gentle, familiar. The memory didn't crash in like a wave. It blinked, like a flickering light in the corner of a room I hadn't entered in years. I was small, maybe 4, sitting on someone's lap, a woman with dark hair pulled into a low bun. Her eyes were warm, her hands careful. She was brushing something from my cheek. And she was singing low, soothing, not in English. Then, another woman entered the room. My mother. No, not the one who raised me. The other one. The one I hadn't seen until now. She smiled like she'd just arrived at a party she didn't want to attend. The warm woman shifted, stood, and said something quickly in that same foreign tongue. The phrase landed in my ears with surprising clarity. "This is your babysitter," she said. My chest constricted. I clutched the bedsheet like it could hold me to the present. I knew that tone. I knew that word. I'd heard it again and again growing up, but never attached to a face. Babysitter. That's what she was supposed to be. That's how they'd explained away the woman in my earliest flickers of memory. But she wasn't a babysitter. She felt like home. Another flash. A doorframe. A coat being pulled over my shoulders. Me crying. I want Mama. A hand sharp, unfamiliar gripped my small arm. Don't say that again. That voice I did know. It belonged to the woman I grew up calling Mom. My stomach flipped. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from sobbing. The past wasn't coming back all at once. It was unraveling in slivers, painful and precise. I stumbled out of bed and into the kitchen, the tiled floor cold against my bare feet. I needed air. I needed light. But mostly, I needed to stop feeling like my own life was happening to someone else. I opened the fridge and stared inside like it might give me answers. Then I heard footsteps. Ryan stood in the doorway, hair messy, eyes half awake. He didn't say anything, just looked at me, then at the counter where I'd laid out the photos again like a ritual I couldn't stop repeating. And right there, in the middle of the kitchen, I whispered, "I think that woman was my real mother." Ryan's face didn't change. He just said, "Then we find out who she was." It started in my chest. Not like a heart attack. Not sharp. Not sudden. It was slower than that. A quiet pressure, like someone was stacking bricks inside my ribcage, one memory at a time. I stood in the kitchen, the photos surrounding me like silent witnesses. The woman with the citrus scent, the hand that gripped too tight, the voice that said, "Don't say that again." And suddenly, the silence inside me wasn't stillness, it was screaming. I couldn't breathe. Ryan stepped forward. "Haley." I flinched before he even touched me. He backed off instantly, palms open, no judgment in his eyes. "It's okay," he said, calm and low. "You're okay." But I wasn't, not even close. I sank to the floor, legs folding underneath me like paper. My palms pressed flat against the cold tile, as if I could hold myself down, anchor myself to something real. But I didn't feel real. I felt like an echo, a cutout, someone else's idea of a daughter. The room swam around me, too bright, too quiet, too false. Ryan sat across from me, not touching, just being there. His presence felt like the only solid thing in the world. "You're safe," he said softly. That word hit me in the throat. Safe. I didn't even know what that meant anymore. And then, before I could second-guess it, before I could fall back into that carefully curated silence my so-called family had trained into me, I reached for my phone. My fingers trembled, hovering above the screen. 911. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. Then, 911, what's your emergency? My mouth opened. Nothing came out. The words caught in my throat like fishhooks. Ryan gently took the phone from me. "Hi, this is her fiancé," he said evenly. "She's having a panic attack. It started about 15 minutes ago. She's been uncovering some things." Pause. Then, "She believes she was abducted as a child. It would have been international outside the US, maybe around 25 years ago. She just remembered something." My breath came in gasps, shallow, broken. My hands had curled into fists without me realizing it. I was shaking so hard I couldn't feel my fingers. The dispatcher's voice was steady. "Is she in danger right now?" Ryan looked at me. I shook my head slowly, numbly. "No," he said. "She's safe, but something happened, and it's real." Okay, I'm logging this as a welfare check and forwarding it to the investigative unit, the dispatcher said. You'll get a follow-up call. If anything changes, call back immediately. Ryan thanked her, then hung up. We sat there in silence. For the first time, the words had been said out loud to someone official, someone real. There was no undoing that, no tucking it back under the rug of a difficult childhood. No more pretending. Eventually, Ryan helped me to the couch. I curled up in a blanket I didn't remember grabbing. He made tea I didn't drink. I stared at the wall like it might crack open and spill out the rest of the truth. At some point, I must have showered, folded laundry, emptied the dishwasher. I was floating through tasks like a ghost rehearsing someone else's life. Ryan never left the room for long. He watched me like I was made of porcelain and the ground was still shaking. You should rest, he whispered once. I nodded but didn't move. Because how do you rest when your entire life just blinked out of focus? The next morning, I got the email. A case file had been opened. An officer would be in touch. That was it. Cold, official, real. I handed Ryan the phone. He read it twice, then looked at me. It's real now, he said. Not like it hadn't been real when I was 4 and screaming for someone who never came. Not like it hadn't been real when they erased her name from my story. But now, someone else knew. Now, there was a file with my name on it and a digital fingerprint that said, something is wrong here. And just when I thought the air was finally beginning to clear, there was a knock at the door. 3 soft, deliberate taps. Not frantic, not threatening. Just inevitable. I opened it. And standing there holding a brown paper bag like she was delivering soup was my mother. Or at least the woman I had always called that. Behind her stood Frank, hands in his coat pockets, face unreadable. Can we come in? She asked, already stepping forward. Ryan appeared behind me. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let the people who had raised me and lied to me into my apartment. They sat on my couch like guests who hadn't been invited but didn't think that mattered. My mother Marjorie smoothed her coat like she was trying to iron out the awkwardness with perfect posture. Frank didn't sit. He stood behind her, arms crossed, the same look he wore when waiting for someone to finish disappointing him. She set the brown paper bag on the coffee table. I brought that carrot soup you liked, from when you were sick that time. My stomach turned. The sick time she meant was when I was 8, feverish and sobbing, and she told me to stop crying because I wasn't dying. That soup? Thanks, I said flatly, not touching it. Ryan sat beside me, arms folded, silent but solid. Marjorie looked around the apartment like she was searching for something to say. Her eyes finally landed on me. We spoke to the police, she said, voice brittle. They said you filed a report. I did. She blinked, like that confirmation offended her. You should have come to us first, she said. Would you have told me the truth? Her mouth opened, then closed. Frank finally spoke. We didn't want to hurt you. Ryan's voice was calm but sharp. So, it's true. Frank exhaled through his nose, then nodded. You're not biologically ours. The room went still. No tears, no yelling, just silence that felt like it could cut through bone. I nodded once. Not in shock, just confirmation. The kind of nod you give when the puzzle piece finally clicks into place, even if the image it reveals is ugly. My mom, no, not my mom, just the woman who raised me twisted her hands. Your mother was young, too young. She couldn't take care of you. She begged us to take you with us. Begged? I echoed. She wanted you to have a better life, Marjorie said. We were leaving. She wasn't. It was war. She knew what that meant. So where is she now? They looked at each other. We don't know, she said after a pause. We lost touch. Ryan leaned forward. Why fake the photos? Frank didn't flinch. We didn't want her to feel like she didn't belong. So you erased her real life and invented one? Ryan asked. Marjorie's voice cracked. You were 5. You cried for her for weeks. It was awful. But you adjusted. You forgot. We thought it was better that way. I stared at her. You could have told me. And said what? She snapped suddenly. That we took you from your mother? That your memories weren't yours? You would have hated us. You think I don't? I whispered. The air tightened. Then, like a magician revealing her final trick, she pulled something from her purse. A photograph. Me, maybe 6 years old, holding Frank's hand. This one's real, she said. Like that was supposed to fix something. I didn't touch it. They stood. Frank looked at Ryan, then at me. We didn't steal you, he said. We rescued you. I didn't answer. Because the worst part? For 10 seconds, I almost believed them. Tell me her name, I said. Marjorie blinked like she didn't understand the question. Frank did that thing he always did, rubbed his face like my existence was exhausting. You were 5, he said. Your memories, they're not reliable. Try me. They hesitated. The room held its breath. Then he said it low, almost reluctant, like the syllables burned. Mira Novak. Just a name. No address, no contact, no apology. When I asked for more, Marjorie shrugged. We lost touch. It was war. Right. And apparently war also erases your ability to type a name into Google. They left soon after. No more soup, no more pretending. The door closed behind them like the ending of a chapter I never agreed to start. Ryan and I stood in the quiet for a while. Then he said, "We'll find her." I sat down, opened my laptop, and typed the name, Mira Novak. It was like shouting into a canyon. Too many echoes, too many dead ends. A florist in Sarajevo, a nurse in Slovenia, a yoga instructor in New Jersey who definitely wasn't my mother. I tried combinations. Mira plus Serbia, Mira plus war plus 1,990s, Mira plus missing daughter, nothing. Then I remembered when I was 10, Marjorie had slipped once. She mentioned a town, not to me, but to a neighbor. I had overheard it while hiding behind the stairs during one of their dinner parties. I'd never forgotten the sound of it. Kragujevac. I added that to the search. And there she was. Grainy profile picture. No filters, no smile. Just a woman in her early 50s with dark hair pulled back, faint lines around her eyes, and a face that made my stomach drop. I didn't even say anything. I just turned the screen toward Ryan. He leaned in, then said softly, "She looks like you." I shook my head. No, I look like her. It wasn't resemblance. It was something deeper, a kind of recognition. The way our jaws curved the same set to the brow, the same tired, calm. I clicked message before I could talk myself out of it. Hello. I was given your name. I think I might be your daughter. We used Google Translate. It probably sounded robotic, but Ryan double-checked every word. I stared at the screen like it might blink first. She replied the next morning. Just one line. Can we talk? I don't remember agreeing. Ryan did all the clicking, set up the video call, positioned the laptop on the coffee table. I just sat there, wrapped in a blanket, hands cold, eyes fixed on the screen. And then she appeared. Older than her profile photo, tired, beautiful. She didn't speak right away. She just stared at me. One hand went to her mouth like she needed to hold something in. Then finally, she said, "I wasn't sure, but now that I see you," her voice broke. "I've been looking for you for 25 years. And just like that, I remembered what it felt like to belong to someone. "I've been looking for you for 25 years, she said. I couldn't speak. The words sat behind my teeth like birds afraid to take flight. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Not yet. She leaned forward slightly, as if getting closer might make it more real. "Your name," she said gently, "was Mila Novak. You were 5. You had a red scarf you never wanted to take off. You called me Mama and tried to help me knead dough every Sunday." I blinked. I didn't remember the scarf. But the dough? Flour. Warmth. A memory surfaced, small hands pressing into soft bread beside a woman who hummed while the world outside trembled. "Did you give me away?" I asked. Her face collapsed, not in theatrics, but in grief that had calcified over decades. "No, God, no. I left you with a neighbor for 2 hours while I ran to finalize our exit papers. When I came back, you were gone. They said you'd left with her, but you never came back. You disappeared." She looked off-screen, grounding herself, then back at me. "I went to every shelter, every camp, every police station. No one helped. They said children go missing in war all the time, but you weren't just missing, you were stolen." I sat still, my heart beat quiet and roaring all at once. Ryan reached over, placed his hand over mine. Then came the final thread. "After you vanished, they took me off the resettlement list. Families with children had priority. No child, no visa." And that was it. That was the piece that had been missing from the photo album. They didn't take me because they loved me. They took me because they needed me. We stayed on the call for hours, both careful with every question, every answer. There was so much space between us, and yet, none at all. Her eyes were mine. My voice, when it softened, mirrored hers. 2 weeks later, we stood side by side at the local precinct. She wore a navy coat. I carried the photos. She brought a folded flyer, her original missing child notice. My name, Mila Novak, printed above a grainy photo of a girl in a red scarf. She handed it to the officer. "This is her," she said, her voice steady but trembling. "This is my daughter." They opened an investigation, and everything unraveled. Frank and Marjorie, now stripped of all illusion, were charged with immigration fraud, falsifying federal documents, and international child abduction. Their citizenship was revoked. They were deported. No appeals, no goodbyes. And I stopped apologizing for asking questions. Mirami mother moved to the US, 6 months later through a family reunification program. Ryan and I helped with the paperwork. She found work at a small cafe down the street, said the smell of pastries reminded her of before. She's on the guest list for our wedding. She cried when she got the invitation. As for me, I no longer flinch when I see old photographs. Because now, when I look at them, I know the truth. My name was never Haley. It was Mila. And I was never lost. I was taken. But now I am home.